Hey folks, it's Sam, and as you can see here, I'm going to be teaching a course on June 11th and 12th, 2022 on Vedic Astrology Remedies and Spiritual Practices, the 80-20 of doing that. Now, this is going to be about learning how to help yourself and help others through Vedic astrology and looking into the chart to see not just the spiritual potentials in general, but how to actually work through it, your chart, other people's charts, and also, understand what the highest potential is as far as practices, the day-to-day practices, and how to get the most out of each moment and your life in general, because every person is going to gravitate towards certain types of practices, but then how to focus them even more specifically toward your higher spiritual teaching, and living your highest and best life, and using Vedic astrology to, enhance that for yourself and for your clients. One of the most important things that I see that gets people hung up in getting to the next level with their Vedic astrology understanding is, in fact, this disconnect between the data that they bring in and their practices, their level of consciousness and awareness and relationship with these forces in general. Many people are Westerners and we're used to, it's astrology, just like other astrology. And, okay, now it's different data. It's Indian. And, okay, it's more spiritual. And it's all this. But it's not an intellectual exercise at some point. It's also about practices. What are you doing in your daily life? And how do those things come about? Now, there's some really interesting things about this weekend, class 1. I'm going to jump to an advancement here so you can see that one of the great things about it is that I'm going to have as a guest teacher Mas Vidal, one of my good friends and colleagues and the owner of Dancing Shiva Yoga and Ayurveda School, also the developer of what's called More Life Herbals, a great remedy or a great herbal remedies company, and also many different oils and remedies for yogis and for spiritual practitioners. I'm going to talk more about that in a second, but again, I just want to make sure people understand this is really a deep dive into not just Vedic astrology, practicing it in a kind of intellectual way where you can read the chart and help people with it. Of course, that's always going to be a big part of it, but really how to bring this into your day-to-day life and experiences. And as it says here, it's true, you love exploring higher consciousness, connecting to deeper truths, as seen in Vedic astrology, but why does spiritual growth seem so difficult? Again, think about it. Why does it seem like, okay, here's another thing now I'm learning, I understand, but I still feel just like the same guy, the same me? Why is the spiritual growth so difficult? Again, sure, it's great to be inspired on that highest level and faith in the universe that we get from astrology, but bringing it into the moment, into the day-to-day, that's really what takes your practices and your life to the next moment. So it just says, what about your day-to-day activities? What are you doing day-to-day, moment-to-moment? That's called karma. It's called karma for a reason, because it's what you're doing, and that's what karma is. What type of personal habits and routines are most natural for you? Again, this is going to be a workshop where we're going to work through your chart. It's not just taking in a lot of information. It's going to be a workshop environment where I talk about things and we look at things, and then you use templates and use methods to work through it yourself, right? So in a workshop type of environment, what habits and routines can you suggest to your clients if you're doing consultations? Do those things change over a lifetime, or are they specific to certain cycles and dasha periods? Again, these are the questions people often have, like, should I be doing this now? What are the methods I should be using now? What are the spiritual practices I should do now, as opposed to in general, like every day? Again, these are the types of things we're going to talk about in general and specific to your chart and to other clients you might get. And by the way, this is one of the reasons I invited Mas Vidal to be involved, because his company, his More Life Market products and company is designed to help balance our doshas, which is the Ayurvedic version of how we get out of balance, and the formulas that he developed through the More Life market, his products and whatnot. By the way, I take them. I'm not a hypocrite. I should have had a bottle here with me. But you'll hear more about that. But they've been designed with his years and decades of yoga and Ayurveda experience to help bring people into that natural state of balance. Because again, there's an overall tendency that we have based on the natal chart factors, but then each moment we're under the influence of different dashas, different transits. What do we do? And how do we look at that ratio? Very important stuff. What are your overall capacities and tendencies, and how do you align them with momentary situations and challenges, like I said before, right? And you'll see that you naturally gravitate toward these things. So again, just like you've always seen with astrology, it's not creating something new. In fact, it's affirming some version of what you already gravitate toward, but you don't have it dialed all the way in until you learn this stuff. You know, like for example, a Gemini person like myself, I'm naturally oriented towards like language, ideas, again, speech. Okay, but what is sacred speech? So again, you could say that would be good for writing, even things like, speaking and whatnot. Okay, but what is sacred speech? Well, it's called mantra, for example. Okay, so mantra in general works for everyone, but what type of mantra? Okay, what type of even devotional practices elevate that? Again, not just based on, quote, Gemini, but this specific one, let's say, for example. Again, each one of the planets has a connection to a divine quality, and you have a relationship with each one of those planets. That is your karma. That's what brought you here. But again, those planets are operating within an environment, in a sign, and within a certain dignity, within a certain baseline level of awareness. And all of that notwithstanding, you are in a certain cycle. Like I'm in Venus, I just went into Venus, Mars. Okay, that's going to be different than literally a month ago when I was in Venus, Moon. Now things are going to shift a little bit. How do you adjust? What are these, this delicate balance between your general nature and what you can gravitate toward naturally? Like for example, years I wrote music. I was a singer-songwriter, right? Singer-songwriter, great, but that's not the most divine purpose of it. The highest version of that verbal is, again, like mantra or kirtan or the elevated expression of that. So you'll have a tendency maybe even towards something like art or this type of thing or that type of thing, service or whatever it might be. But what's the highest version of that? The most pure, like essential oil, if you were to extract it. So these are the things that you'll get very clear about, and even like specific mantras, specific deities, specific practices, right? Again, what is your overall, capacity in general, and then your momentary challenges and opportunities, and what is the deeper core issue behind every one of these planet signs, houses, and nakshatras? Because they all have a core issue, but it has to be aligned and harmonized with the level of awareness, that specific planet, let's say, that's in that sign, that's ruling it. There's a whole lot of subtlety that can not only show you what would be the practice, but why it's a little bit difficult. And again, even something like with what Mas will be sharing, how to support things that might be difficult within that evolutionary process, right? So again, he's going to be helping us on the bonus Q&A weekend. He's going to be teaching an adjunct class and sit in on the Q&A on June 19th, right? And then also expose us to a lot of the different formulas that he's put together in his More Life market. But again, we're going to explore this not just as a course, but as a workshop. So in this weekend workshop, you'll not only hear me talk about these things, but you'll also work through them in workshop fashion with your own chart, other charts as well. You'll be given a formula and template that will be a roadmap that you can use to unlock the real secrets of your nature that are often most hidden from your view. For example, here's this is a recent workshop that I just did with my certification course students here in May. And again, it wasn't just lectures. I taught a bunch of stuff and then they did it. They not only worked through it, but they spoke it, they said the words, they activated the power in their own mind and consciousness, because it's not just a matter of always taking in information, it's now doing something about it. It's now working through it actively. So we're also going to use what's called the 80-20 principle. You may have heard of it, called the Pareto principle. It says 20% of the data gives you 80% of the results, or 20% of what you're focusing on gives you 80%. So in any situation, such as using Vedic astrology to understand your spiritual tendencies, habits, and crucial moments, can be best understood by analyzing the 20% of the most important information. That 20% will get you 80% of the results. Think of how much percentage of the results you're getting now. Probably not 80%, or not 80% of the time, or whatever. And this is good news because it means you don't need to learn every single thing there is. Just the most important things you need to know from every single category, but think of what that means. For example, the most important 20% of information and practices connected to the sun and all the other planets will get you 80% of those results. You might be only aware of and actualizing, 50% of the sun, maybe, if you're lucky, like you understand it maybe half. Imagine if it's 80%, you really get it. And then magnify that by every planet. That's what that 80-20 can do when it magnifies. But then think about the most important 20% of information and practices connected to the zodiac signs. Get you 80% of the results. I just gave a quick example. You might not have even realized, oh yeah, Gemini, air signs. Oh yeah, speech. Things related to speech, information, that might be writing or this or that. You might not have even known that. That doesn't mean, what do you write? What do you speak? It's not just speech. You can say anything. You can write anything. You can listen to anything. No, it's the sacred speech. Okay, that's getting you there. But which specific type of speech or mantra or whatever for this particular person? Because they have a different arrangement. Again, now we're purifying. We don't have to reinvent and learn every single thing there is to get us like pretty much almost there. And then once we get almost there, then we have to actually do the practices. That's the hardest part. And so when we're in ignorance, we don't even know what the practices are, so we're not likely to do them. And again, this is the important thing. You'll find that the practices align with what you're naturally oriented towards doing anyway. Again, you can't force something on people. We don't want to do anything that we don't want to do. So, but if we don't even understand the nature of where we're coming from with something, then trying to get us to do something with it is just going to be futile. We're going to go back to what feels good to us, even if we're doing it sort of mechanically. So, sort of compelling that natural instinct and then elevating it is what we're going to be doing around all the planet signs, houses. And again, the most important 20% of information, practices connected to the houses, the same thing. With the nakshatras, the same thing. Most important 20% connected to the timing factors, the dashas, the transits. What is the most important things to focus on with the dashas? Again, it's not just any dasha. What's the real essence of that? What is the main thing to concentrate on? What is the main thing to concentrate on with the transits and the most important stuff to dial in at any given time? So already you can see how bringing all these factors together in a highly concentrated way can be very beneficial. So again, I'm teaching this because I firmly believe, like I said, one of the biggest stumbling blocks is doing Vedic astrology well is understanding the importance of the spiritual practices to give you the necessary depth and clarity. This clarity allows you to experience the truth of the Vedic astrological energies, meaning the reason Venus energies may be hard for you to comprehend clearly and therefore explain clearly is because you're not connected to it. You're not connected to that one. Like maybe you just don't get that very easily. So when it comes up, you don't really know what to say about it. But again, perhaps you just experience it on the surface as a desire to be happy or whatever, but that's it. So when someone has an issue with Venus or whatever, you just kind of stay on this like relationship level, this very surface level. You don't really know how to advise them to something beyond because you don't experience it. You don't feel it. But again, there are spiritual practices that enhance desire, for example, and expands it toward consciousness. In the case of Venus, it's an inner expansion of bliss towards something that's not dependent on other people and outer forms of happiness or stimulation. But again, if you don't experience that and you don't even know the practices that help you connect with it, your interpretations are just going to be quite shallow, right? And again, it'll be hard for you to really bring the depth out. And I say this with all due respect, but many are in the West and they're used to Western astrology, which doesn't really have that same connection. That remains quite psychological. It's not, you don't even have deities, you don't have all these spiritual practices. If it is, they're Eastern practices. They tell you to do yoga or something, but again, that's just a general thing. That's not specific methods that are intentionally designed to activate Venus energy, which is what it is in Indian astrology. That's why the power of Vedic astrology is so powerful, because it's not separate from the spiritual traditions of yoga and Tantra and Ayurveda. Something like happiness and bliss is a divine experience. It's not something we need to struggle with, but it's also understood to be limited externally. So how do we awaken it internally? And again, I can say that and you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But then you don't know what the actual things are or how to really examine them and really understand them, let alone practice them. So that thing remains just, again, a lot of information, like you're taking this information in now, and it's interesting and stimulating and all, but it's not going to change anything unless you do something different, right? That's what karma is, and that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be unpacking those things. So, as I say, there are practices everyone should do, and in fact must do, if they're going to elevate happiness toward its transcendent state of bliss. But those practices are a little different for each person based on that Pareto principle methods that I'm going to be teaching, the 80-20 of your Venus, of Venus in general, of your Venus, of that sign, that house, that nakshatra, that other stuff. Again, the transit is going to be affecting the Venus. It's all of it. So again, it's a unique learning format, a very friendly online satsang, where it's not just me teaching, but it's teaching with one of my faculty. I haven't decided that yet. I will update you on that. But it'll be one of my teachers that have, not say my teachers, but teachers that graduated from my school. I haven't yet asked someone yet, but I will. So it's a lively exchange, a fun and deep conversation. And again, to see the teachings come to life through lively, fun, and deep conversations where both teachers also open up their life to show you how the teachings impact them is so much more mesmerizing and so much more engaging than just getting a bunch of data. Me and I say students and teachers are friends. We like each other and we get along, and you see our excitement sharing this, and you hear the unique stories. I'll say something and then I'll ask, does that make sense? Oh yeah, I remember when blah, 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 because they've been through this process. They have gone through the process that many of you haven't yet, with taking astrology from the place where maybe you're at with it now, where again, you're excited about it and something's just not totally connecting yet. And they started to do this. And it's like, I remember and I realize, oh yeah, that's what it is. Now I get it. And again, once you have those experiences, you don't forget. So it's a very unique way to learn, makes that learning process extremely enjoyable. So again, as I say, it's going to be June 11th and 12th in your home. Or if you can't make it live, of course, there's always the recordings that you have for the rest of your life. And again, plus we have that live Q&A with Mas Vidal the following weekend, June 19th. As you can see, and again, if you're at the sales page here, you just click register now and it'll open up the checkout page. You just go there and open up the checkout page and you just go ahead and do it. And this, again, there's also some bonus courses that are available. One is a class that I taught called Vulnerability and Victory, the hidden vulnerability and overcompensation strategy of each sign. Very powerful. People really loved this. It's about an hour class. And then number 2 is called Releasing the Serpent, which is about Rahu Ketu and the confusing obsessions of the lunar nodes. You could see that on this page. Again, people love these 2 courses. You could see feedback on those classes. And again, the guest faculty so far is going to be Mas Vidal. Assisting and co-teaching will also be a member of the American Academy of Vedic Art and Science faculty, one of my graduates and teachers. But so you'll get to see that lively exchange between me and them, and also you'll get to see and benefit from Mas Vidal and his years of experience. Again, he's the owner of Dancing Shiva, which is an online yoga and Ayurveda school. Also, numerous books on yoga and Ayurveda, and the developer of More Life Herbals, Moss just did a recent book called The Evolution Revolution. I actually contributed some to that book, and also gave a testimonial. He also did a great book called Sun, Moon, and Earth, Yoga and Ayurveda. Moss is world renowned. You're incredibly lucky to be learning from him and to be benefiting from all of his work and hard and years of service to develop these great products, More Life tonics and capsules and great Ayurveda remedies that he also has a special for us all and whatnot. So it'll be great. He's going to be taking care of us in that way. So again, when you're on the page, just click here to join the class. Those buttons are all over, and register, and you get access to the bonus classes right away. So thanks a lot, and we'll see you in the class.